Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC TV. I'm quite excited about this episode as we have Brian Duckering from Symantec on the show with us to actually show off all this amazing stuff Symantec is doing within the virtualization world. And in particular, today we're going to talk about Symantec Workspace Corporate and Workspace Remote sort of desktop brokering solutions. So I'm not going to go into this. I'll let Brian do that. So let's just dive directly into it. Brian, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'll just go into my first question. Can you just describe who you are and what do you do over at Symantec real quick?
Sure. Brian Duckering. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager, and I'm in the Endpoint Virtualization group. So this group's been around for about a year and a half now, and we talked about this a little while ago about what we're doing and why we're doing it. In terms of, really our goal is to elevate the productivity of end users and at the same time reduce the cost of managing endpoints. So, two traditionally opposing goals we're trying to raise both at the same time. And we talked about, a number of things within the Endpoint Virtualization suite, which contains all of our technologies. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about all of them, but with a bit more focus this time on the desktop broker components, which is the Symantec Workspace Corporate and Workspace Remote pieces.
Okay, that sounds great, Brian. So that's enough with the sort of housekeeping tasks. If anybody out there wants to learn more about what Symantec is doing, definitely check out Symantec's site. But also, we did a podcast with these guys not long ago, so go to DABCC Radio and on DABCC.com, and you'll be able to find that podcast. Go ahead and download it, or go to the show notes of this video, and the link will be to that podcast. And we dive in for something like 50 minutes or something, going pretty deep into the Symantec virtualization solution. So we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to show it. So Brian, what are you going to show us?
So I'm actually going to show several of our products actually all working together in kind of a mock scenario. We'll start on, so that people can really understand, what is some of the potential value, what's the value that some of our customers are already getting, and how would these things work together. All right?
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Let's
do it. So on the screen you can see, typical XP desktop. So the scenario here is, in my job, maybe I'm traveling and someone's asked me to edit a Visio drawing, but I don't have my corporate system with me, so I'm logging in through someone else's system. And the Workspace Remote product is going to actually allow me to connect into my corporate workspace. That's the workspace that's been set up that allows me to get my job done. So that's where my applications are. That's where all my customizations are. That's where my stuff is. So Workspace Remote actually allows me to connect in through a browser and actually bring that session to me. And this is actually really, really fantastic, because instead of having to use a VPN where I'm taking this unknown, mysterious, potentially hazardous system, and VPN would actually add it onto the corporate network, which typically IT folks don't want, I'm actually accessing my desktop through a browser, which maintains a complete separation between this host system that I'm sitting at and the system and my workspace that I'm connecting into. So what I'm going to do here is actually I'm going to go and connect into the open a browser so that I can go in. I'm going to log in, so I still have to authenticate. Okay, use my username and password here, and that's going to connect me in. Now, I'm not a very trusted user in this scenario, so what you'll actually see here is I don't even get normal XP desktop. I get just the applications that I'm allowed to see. Okay, so if you scroll down here, all I can do is disconnect or log off. It's a locked down desktop. Okay, so you can see, the disconnect is an option, but I don't have the start menu. I don't have many of the possible ways there are to screw up the system or to access things I shouldn't access. I just have the applications I need.
And how are you locking that down? Is that part of the Symantec Workspace solution?
Yeah, the Workspace Corporate and Remote solution actually provides an alternate GINA, which replaces the Explorer EXE, which provides the desktop and controls the taskbar and everything else. We've replaced that and said, okay, for a lockdown user, we're only going to give them these options. So here's the 2 or 3 applications they're allowed to use, and if they want to disconnect or log off, they can do that, and that's it.
Very cool. So in some ways, when I look at this, it's almost like what Res Software and AppSense is bringing to the table with user management. You just have it as part of your broker solution.
Right, and of course, user management is a part of this, and you bring up a good point. There's certainly overlap if you look at a lot of the different products out there. What we've done with this product is really pulled together the set of features that's really the high value features. And I'll tell you right now, this particular product was developed primarily around a healthcare environment. So, and there's a number of advantages to that, because in the healthcare environment, you've got a lot of issues that are more stringent than a lot of other environments, like the HIPAA rules, controlling access, controlling applications and healthcare records. It's an environment where people are inherently moving from system to system, and they need to be up in seconds, not logging in, right? So we actually have documented cases where doctors are reducing their rounds time by up to 2 hours, simply because when they show up at a new system, they're in just a few seconds. The applications they're using are already up. They get what they need done. We handle local printing, all of that stuff, single sign-on, and it just saves a ton of time in those environments where people are moving around in particular.
Absolutely. But yet this applies to many other verticals also.
Absolutely. I mean, any environment where you've got thin clients or kiosks. The other factor that we look for a lot is companies that have multiple server-side computing models. So if you've got terminal servers and you've got VDI, you're looking at VDI, and maybe you've got some Blade servers, and of course everyone has rich clients. This is a way to really tie them all together, so you can essentially unify your logins and your workspace experience across all of those and start to eliminate some of the redundancies in managing users across these different platforms. So that's a huge advantage of this.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, what else are you going to show us?
Well, so in this scenario, I'm going to go ahead and use Visio, and now so we're bringing in the streaming here. This wasn't originally on there, and you'll see I'm going to go up here and I'm going to switch to a different VM here where you can actually see the Visio licenses. None were previously consumed. When I update or refresh the screen, you can see one is consumed. So really, what I'm doing there is, and we'll go back, really highlighting the fact that managing the licenses, optimizing licenses, making sure that the right assets are available for the right people, while at the same time minimizing the cost of licenses is a big piece of this when people are moving around, from system to system, or even if they're not. Everyone who wants to be in compliance without something like this is probably paying more for licenses than they need. Okay, so and then of course I can go ahead and I can start using this immediately. I don't need to wait 20 minutes to install the application. I can go do some parts and assembly drawing, and what it's going to do, the streaming is going to bring in the additional functionality bit by bit as I use it. Okay, so I don't need to wait for the whole thing to install, and that's the beauty of streaming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now I get to the point here where I'm out of time. I gotta go. I don't know, do something else. So I'm going to leave this session, and then the next time I show up, I'm going to be back at my corporate environment. So I'm going to switch back to my corporate machine. Okay, I'm going to log in. Now this is a managed system, right? So I'm going to log in here, same login, and you'll see that it's actually going to bring. There's Windows XP underneath, but we're replacing the GINA, as I mentioned. So I still get my same locked down environment. And notice that I'm actually exactly where I left off. If I was in the middle of typing a word, then I'd still be in the middle of typing a word. But now I'm back in my corporate environment, and it just transfers over.
Sweet. So no matter where you are, if I'm at my mother's house or at home on my Mac, or sitting at my, corporate machine. I can get, it just roams with me as I where I go.
Exactly. So I can come in here and finish up my work, and then that's it. So now here's the other thing. Let's close out of this. Now I'm on a corporate machine here, and this machine is accessible to a number of different people. I mean, we already talked a little bit about the healthcare environment. Maybe we're in retail. Maybe we're in some government environments. There's a lot of situations where there's shared resources. So on this same device, I'm going to log out, and now I'm going to have someone else log in, and this someone else is going to have a different role in the company. And this is key to our overall message. We want to provide the right productivity to the right user, wherever they are and whatever device they're on. Notice we got XP underneath. This time, this user that logs in actually is a trusted user that actually is using more local computing. So I'm going to get rid of that here. I'll do the same thing. Now this guy is going to run Visio also, but notice he's in an entirely different environment, even though he's logged into the same device. Right, so this is actually a VDI environment. So he's actually got a dedicated workspace for himself in a VM back in the data center. And that's what he's accessing. So I'm going to go ahead and have him do the same thing. Notice he gets a similar experience acquiring the Visio product. Okay, still only going to take about 12 to 15 seconds to get this thing running, and then he can go off and do his job. So the difference here is that the role in the company is going to determine what the what the environment, what the security level is. We can even differentiate between if you're local or remote and control access to different applications and different things. And again, going back to the healthcare environment, that's actually very critical, because when you do move outside of that corporate environment and you're in the remote environment, we can actually control and say, okay, you know what, you're not in our controlled hospital environment, so here's some certain applications or records that you're just not going to be allowed to see. So let's go back here. Now, remember we had one license acquired, and if I refresh that, now you can see there's two, and you can see there's the two different users that have actually acquired those two licenses while we've been talking. Okay? Does that all make sense so far?
Oh, absolutely.
So the user roaming, the configuration of the environment according to who you are, where you are. Now let's talk a little bit about the virtualization. Those that have been following us for a while should be somewhat familiar with our software virtualization product, and that's now called the Symantec Workspace Virtualization product. People might know that as SVS that have been following it for a while. So I'm going to show a couple new things we've done there just to kind of keep some excitement going on that. So one of the things you notice, see, I've got a couple different versions of Java. So one of the big problems that we've heard over the years is, in particular with middleware, but certainly with applications that cause problems. Java is just a really good example. I have requirements for this particular application. Maybe it's a homegrown application, maybe it's a commercial application that needs a specific version of Java that's different than the latest or what's in the base. So we can actually specify which one we want. So I've got a couple applications set up here. In this case, both applications are Internet Explorer, but I'm going to run each of them, and each one is configured to link to a separate version. So I'm going to click on the Java Virtual Machine test site so you can see which version this particular application sees, and you can see that just updated. So this one is seeing version 1.4. Let's run the other one now. We'll click on the same link here, and you'll see this one should actually find 1.5. Let's see what this comes up with. There you go, 1.5. So each of those is in a different layer, and we can control which one has access to which other one. Now, in some cases, we actually need to hide. We actually need to provide some level of isolation. Now, one of the things that we've talked about for a long time with our approach, with both our streaming and our virtualization, is our native structure that allows applications to work natively and inherently and fully interactive with all the other applications. Something that nobody else has really done, and certainly not to the level that we've done, where everything just runs normally in the normal environment that it was designed for. There are occasionally situations where we need to provide some isolation. So let's take a look at that. If I look at the options here, you can see that I've got 3 different options. I can hide this layer from other layers. Sometimes just the existence of this layer is going to cause problems for other applications. So that's one setting. We've got this other setting where I can hide it from the operating system. So the operating system won't even be able to see that it's there. Okay? And then lastly, we can hide other layers from this layer so that it can't see out. So basically, can't see in, can't see out. If I have all 3 of these checked, that's essentially providing that full level of isolation, which is the normal mode, and in some cases the inescapable mode of some of the other virtualization solutions. Okay, so I can provide all the isolation that I need. Now, if I've got this isolated so it doesn't cause problems, but it needs to be there in order to support something else like Office, like Open Office, I have this other option that I can set dependent layer. So a dependent layer is where I'm setting one of my other application layers that is dependent on another one. And that'll actually break through that isolation just for this application and make that available. And I don't have to package them together. I don't have to break the virtualization that we've accomplished. So we're looking at Java 6 here as the dependent layer to Open Office, which is required for the Open Base or whatever that product is. So let's go ahead and see how that works. when we go to activate, I'm going to activate Open Office, and watch what happens. The Java 6 automatically activates because it is a dependent layer. Now I can go ahead and run Open Office Base, and it'll run without complaints, and everything will work. And yet the Java 6 version is completely isolated and invisible from the rest of the system and the other versions. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool.
Okay. So that's kind of a real quick summary. I've got all of them working together, but really the focus there is I'm moving from system to system, and there's a lot of different applications of this. We talked about healthcare and retail and government and a lot of these other types of environments where people are moving around, where productivity is key, where security is key, where we've got to control the access. And that's what this really excels at. In addition to, of course, you've got multiple backends, because if you go to VMware or Citrix, whatever, they're really only going to help you manage that one particular environment, right? So Symantec, traditionally works across different platforms, different products. So we're continuing that theme here with endpoint virtualization. So that gives us some distinct advantages. So now I just want to take another minute or two to highlight a couple items in the admin console for Workspace and Corporate, and we'll finish up with that. So let me switch over to that now. Okay, so we're looking at the admin console for Symantec Workspace Corporate, and I'll point out that the controls are the same for corporate and remote. It's just separate products depending on what kind of access you want to provide. So we'll start off with a couple of things. I'm looking at this is a demo environment, so I just have a few computers, but we can control for each device a number of things, like whether we're going to run in full shell mode or remote or lockdown. We talked about that a little bit. I also mentioned remote printing. So regardless of who I am, if I show up at a particular device, I should be able to print to the printer that's right in that room or in that particular area. So we make that real easy to set up like that. Let's also go to users, because we had a user logged in, and it was actually this fellow right here, SWC user 1. And here you can see we've got he's a member of some groups, okay, and this actually comes directly from your Active Directory. And because single sign-on is a big part of this. We can actually control. In this case, it's very simple password, but we can actually support multiple and simultaneous authentication methods. I just don't have anything connected in the system right now, but this is where you would do that.
Perfect. What do you mean single sign-on is a big part of it? So we can have single sign-on for our applications, and how does that work?
Absolutely. In fact, here, let me go ahead and move down the line here and see if I can make that a little more clear. Let's take Visio as an example. Now you don't have to log in separately for Visio, so perhaps it isn't a good example, but single sign-on means that once I'm logged into a corporate workspace, whether it's again terminal server or a rich client or a Blade or whatever it is, it knows who I am already, and a lot of applications in some of these different environments actually have their own separate logins. And one of the productivity killers is having to remember all those logins, taking the time to enter all those logins, and then with increased controls in a lot of these sectors like finance and healthcare, of course, companies are being forced to, or users are being forced to change their logins at a far higher rate than they were before. It might be 30 days now instead of 90 days. Okay, so the single sign-on actually manages all that for you. So when it detects that an application or something is requiring a new login, it'll just come up with a new password for you. It'll all be transparent. And as long as you're logging in through your domain, it'll take care of the rest for you. Again, it's all about productivity.
Absolutely. That's very cool. And that's something some of the other solutions out there does not have. They do not do.
That's correct. Now, if you're talking about Citrix and some of the other big players, they all have this built in to a certain extent because again that's part of that whole system. What we're doing really is providing this in a way that it can actually be layered across a variety of back-end infrastructures if you want.
Yeah.
And again, going back to one of the things we talked about in our last interview on DABCC Radio was we want to be able to advocate companies using the right infrastructures to support their users. So each company of any significant size is going to have users with different roles, that play different roles, that work in different ways in different locations. And we do not agree with anyone that's trying to convince you that one compute model or one infrastructure model is going to satisfy everyone in the company. Right? A terminal server environment, a shared environment like that is very cost effective, and it's great for call centers and task-oriented workers. But although it's very inexpensive, it's just not the right. It's not the right solution for engineers and sales folks that need either rich client experience, a lot of interactivity, or even disconnect frequently. So you're going to spend a little bit more, and that's where you get into the balance of am I using the right cost-effective infrastructure for the productivity that this particular group of users needs? And that's a big part of this whole solution, why the brokering piece is key.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what else are you going to show us?
Well, it's actually fairly simple. So again, we can set up all the single sign-on stuff there. I guess the other thing that's kind of interesting, in particular when you're talking about kiosk type environments, is we have the ability to do system-wide notifications and banners. The CEO is on the floor, and that'll show up on everyone's system so everyone knows how to behave properly. Or you can actually connect messages to individual applications and warn people that there's going to be an update, or maybe there's going to be a disruption in the system for something, and it'll just show up when they open that particular application or that session. So, for example, if I go to System Manager here, I can set up different banner messages, and I've got one here. This is an example of a banner message, and I can pick different ones and control the background. So this is the kind of thing that would just show up across when you log in. You can control, when it shows up, how long. So it also helps in environments where you need broad levels of communication to specific groups as well.
Absolutely, that's very cool.
Okay, so hopefully I've given you a taste of how simple and yet powerful this is, and how it can apply to different environments, and really how the different pieces ultimately contribute to our overall message of really reducing the cost of managing these endpoint connectivity where users are trying to get their work done, and at the same time reducing the cost, which I think has really become top priority for everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I have one more question for you, and that is, somebody's watched this video and they're like, well, this seems pretty interesting. This might solve some of our problems. I want to learn more. What do they need to do?
Well, they can go to Symantec.com. They can look for the Endpoint Virtualization Suite. In our A to Z product list is a real easy way to get there. We've got all sorts of white papers, a lot of good case studies they can look at. I'm sure most of the people watching are going to find something that relates very closely to what they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, perfect. And of course, as always, we will put those in the show notes. But before we go ahead and call this a video, an episode, is there anything else you'd like to show us? Anything else we'd like to talk about?
I think that's it. We covered what we wanted to cover this time around.
So that being said, Brian, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I look forward to having you back on the show, and thanks so much.